So today I'm going to take a look at this article that was on the front page of the BBC News site recently. So we can see it says, "Is climate change making turbulence worse?" It's written by Esme Stallard, who apparently is a climate and science reporter. So this is on the back of the Singapore Airlines flight recently that experienced some very severe turbulence, and apparently there was a lot of injuries on the plane, and like it says here, one man actually died. It does go on to say that actually turbulence of this intensity is rare, but studies have shown that climate change could be increasing the risk. So, of course, there's that word "could be," which also might be not the case as well. It's not will be increasing the risk, it's only could be increasing the risk. So it goes on to talk about what turbulence is here, although it does point out that Singapore Airlines flight is not actually clear whether it was a result of clear air turbulence or from thunderstorms. I mean, from what I've read elsewhere, it does seem that it's probably thunderstorms are more likely. But basically, this news article has been written on the back of this it's referencing a study that was written last year. So it's clearly another another kind of scaremongering about the effects of climate change. I mean, there is an old saying apparently in the media that if it scares, it airs, and if it bleeds, it leads. And anybody who's kind of read the news or watched TV news will be very aware that that is the case. But anyway, so it goes on to say here that last year some scientists from Reading University found that severe turbulence from clear air phenomenon had increased between 55% between 1979 and 2020 in the North Atlantic. So one of the problems I had with this article is I've read it a couple of times, and it seems to be a little bit ambiguous about whether that 55% increase is actually just a turbulence in the atmosphere or whether it's actually incidents of turbulence recorded by aircraft. And the actual study is about the atmosphere, not actual turbulence incidents on aircraft. I think it could certainly be a bit clearer. But one interesting point about this is that go to the study in a minute. So in fact, if we go over now, here we go. So this is the study, and in terms of looking at the impact of climate change, it's actually using a scenario called RCP 8.5, which apparently is the most extreme scenario for CO2 emissions that is used. I think the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, I think they actually say that scenario is probably unlikely. So it's not clear why. It's possible that it's described somewhere in this study why they've used the most severe one, and why they've maybe not done this for each of the different RCP scenarios. But if we go to the end of this study, summary and discussion, we can see in the final paragraph it does say that future work should address the various limitations of the study that they describe. But if we go towards the bottom of the paragraph there, it does say turbulence data from aircraft could also be analysed, but the time period for which quantitative automated measurements available is far shorter than the 42-year period that the study covers, making trend detection problematic. And then it says, in the absence of long-term record of aircraft turbulence measurements, some reanalysis diagnostics provide the best available global picture of historic variations in clear air turbulence. So it's interesting that the BBC science reporter here doesn't actually make it clear which RCP scenario that they're using and whether the IPCC consider that to be a plausible or likely scenario. It does make me wonder actually whether the reporter has actually read the study or whether they basically just look at a summary given to them by by one of the scientists in this case, Professor Williams, I believe it is. So clearly, if you miss out certain context in an article, you're going to give a potentially misleading picture of things. I mean, certainly given that the amount of air travel since 1979 has increased absolutely massively, then all other things being equal, you would certainly expect the number of turbulence incidents on aircraft to increase just purely because of the increased number of flights, assuming that they're not getting better at avoiding clear air turbulence. So yeah, it goes on to then talk about why thunderstorms cause turbulence because this particular Singapore Airlines flight may have actually been affected by that, and then of course the usual thing then, or storm's going to get more severe again. So is that also going to affect flights? One thing that Professor Williams didn't say to the BBC, or that they didn't report, whichever is the case, actually we can see in this recent article from Reuters, which is about the same subject. If we go down, try and find it. There's a quote from Professor Williams somewhere near the bottom here, just bear with me. So it says here that he told Fox News that while there seems to be a strong correlation, more research is needed. And they actually quote him here saying, "It's too early to definitively blame climate change for the recent apparent increases in turbulence, because increased media coverage aided by in-flight video footage from things like phones may be a factor." I'll put a link in the description to a PDF on the National Transportation Safety Board of the United States. It's quite long, but if you want to have a look at that and a skim through, there is actually a graph in there showing, at least in parts of the US, that over, I can't remember what the period is, might be 20, 30 years, the incidence of turbulence actually in aircraft isn't really showing an upward trend. Now, whether that's because those particular regions are less affected by clear air turbulence and climate change, or whether it's because planes are getting better at detecting it and avoiding it, I don't know. So I think the point is though that this kind of article, it's really just another case of trying to scare people about climate change. I mean, the number of articles that has been on the BBC news site recently, I think from what I can remember off the top of my head, there was one about how climate change might affect the taste of mangoes in the future, and then another one how it might affect the availability of pints of beer in Britain because of potential impacts on hop yields. And clearly this the Singapore Airlines flight has given the BBC another chance to try and scare us even further. But I think what really gets my goat though is that this is a climate and science reporter, but they're missing out quite serious context actually from the study. Like I say, I don't know whether this is purposeful because they've read the study and they didn't feel for whatever reason that they should report things like the RCP scenario or not, and the fact that it is slightly ambiguous because it does potentially imply that the 55% increase is actually the incidence on planes, when it's actually just the measurements in the atmosphere from that study. So always beware of when the media reports on scientific studies. I think is the lesson from this, because when you actually go and look at the devil in the details of the study itself, it's often not quite as they report it.